business owners just want to plough straight into the process, and a lot of people just don't spend the time they should to kind of get their backyard in order. And the problem with not getting your backyard in order is that
Sierra Legal, you're wearing a t-shirt that says the business name on there. Most lawyers would have come here with a suit and jacket. So tell us what that little difference is, because we've talked about it. You have a unique law practice. You operate a little bit differently in the way that you hire the staff, how they work and where they work. Tell us a little bit about the edge that Sierra Legal brings to the legal profession.
Well, I suppose when you say operate differently, we're still lawyers and do everything, play everything by the book, if you like. But yeah, different, probably set up a little bit differently in your typical law firm. So when I started the business in 2010, it was predominantly a remote model, and so that could also almost be another podcast, how to run a remote business. But that was the model. So when COVID hit and everyone started using Zoom, we'd been using it for 8 years or so. So that's the model, because I'd been working so long in the city, and thought that I'd spend a bit more time around the home and take a few overheads out of the business, etc., and try and be a bit more of a lean, mean machine, and get out of that ivory tower, I suppose, was the in the city. Get out of that environment and more of a flexible sort of environment. And the staff we've got now, we've got the team. We're spread across Queensland and New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and we're predominantly remote. We come together. I think that's still important, to come together occasionally and as a team, which we do. But predominantly we're a remote model, and a lot of the lawyers like me are out of the big firms wanting to get out of that ivory tower model and do something a bit different. And there's other aspects of the business too. We're probably one of the few law firms that we don't set personal budgets for our lawyers. So we think that if we do a good job, then because we've got that low overhead model, we can afford to do that, and we think that the rest will look after itself.
To run through a process for a seller from a legal perspective, in terms of what they need to sort of think about before they go to market, just from a legal perspective on things that they need to just be aware of before they go out and plunge and hire a broker and go through this process.
A lot of business owners just want to plough straight into the process, and a lot of people just don't spend the time they should to kind of get their backyard in order. And the problem with not getting your backyard in order is that if you let a buyer into your business and they start doing due diligence and having a good look around, if they spot issues, that can all of a sudden bring down the confidence level of the buyer. It can probably is going to result in them trying to chisel down the price or possibly work sort of fairly onerous sort of warranties and indemnities and the like into the sale agreement, or even worse still, walk away from the deal. So very important that for a seller to get their backyard in order before they go to market.
So what would be the process? So what are the things that getting a backyard in order would look like from a legal perspective? What are some of the things that they need to consider to get right?
Yeah, if we're asked to, it doesn't happen all the time, but if we're asked by a client to come in and do that sort of legal audit, it's essentially almost replicating what a buyer would do during the due diligence. So asking a whole lot of questions, extracting all the relevant documents and really trawling through their business in a fine tooth comb to find any gaps, any legal issues. And to answer your question, the typical things that you might come across sometimes. Often the corporate register's a mess. And that's something that you guys as accountants might see and might be able to help with. But it's a very simple thing to fix. But often the corporate register's a bit of a disaster. So the last thing you want to do is hand that over to a buyer before it's spick and span. PPSR registrations is another one that often sellers, aren't aware of or don't fix up. A lot of sellers or target companies wouldn't be aware that they've got 10, sometimes hundreds of PPSR registrations or security interests registered against their business. And it might have just been a Xerox photocopier that they had 5 years ago, which they leased and was paid out years ago, but it's still a security interest there, and it needs to be removed, but no one's ever done that. So that can be a bit something that it can take time to remove those registrations and get it cleaned up. So that's another thing we spot. Intellectual property is another issue we sometimes uncover in these legal sort of audits. So particularly around, say, trademarks, people not using names and not registering them as trademarks, or having let them lapse, etc. So that's something that we come across. Probably customer and supplier contracts would be another one. So it's not. I mean, some businesses are different. Some businesses don't necessarily always have contracts documented, but obviously, if you're selling a business, ideally you would have those sorts of things documented. Or if they are documented, often they're not signed properly or not dated. They're not, or they might have ridiculously onerous provisions in there that there might, who knows, there might be an opportunity to look at those and perhaps renegotiate them before you put your business on the market. And the final probably example would be probably employees, not having employment arrangements properly documented with the staff, etc. That'd be so they're just a few examples of the sort of things that we might see if we go in early before the business goes onto the market.